Thanks. It was May 12th. My wife had been laboring for about 12 hours, and she and the baby were finally ready to start the hard work, pushing. Well, after about 4 pushes, we had a newborn baby taking his first breath. And as the doctors held out the slimy, goopy, beautiful baby, they asked me to pronounce the gender. So I leaned in, took a peek at the plumbing, and we had a boy. We had a boy. And after that, they wrapped up Corbin and gave him to my wife. And in her completely exhausted but euphoric state, she'd uttered a statement that would forever change our lives. He has a penis. What are we going to do with a penis? Now, that statement would forever change our lives, not because it was our first child. It was our second. We have a wild and crazy, high-energy, adventurous 2-year-old daughter named Sophie. She will forever be her papa's little girl and has me in the palm of her hands. But seriously, how could you not love that? Look at those baby blues, that blonde hair, and those dimples. But this talk is not about that. And maybe someday I'll give a talk about what it takes to father a daughter and the extreme amount of wisdom you need to do that. But again, that's not this talk. This talk is about how Corbin forever changed our lives and our story that day. I now had a son. My over 7 years I had invested as a high school football coach and as a mentor, helping facilitate a ministry called Band of Brothers, where we teach boys to live life to the full through sound biblical teaching, and where men just share lives with boys, now had more meaning and immediate impact. Because I finally had some skin in the game, a horse to race, or a Corbin to raise. Boys need men. My 4 months as Corbin's father, my 7 years as a mentor and coach, and my over 30 years as a boy myself, a son, and a man has given me very close first-hand experiences with lots of boys' stories. And I am left with only one clear, undeniable fact, and that is that boys need men. They need positive male role models in their lives. Now, ladies, you're great, and we would be completely lost without you. But part of the reason I feel boys need men is because we can relate on a completely different level. We have the same wiring, makeup, equipment. Boys need men. Now, where does it all start? It starts with our fathers. My father is a great man and dad. And he's taught me so much: integrity, persistence, how to marry and love one woman, how to do a job well, how to work hard, and so much more that I can't even think of. And when I think about my father and what he's taught me, I come back to stories like when I was a boy and I had a paper out, and even though he would work 60 and 70-hour weeks, he'd still get up with me on Saturday mornings and help. Him driving the Suburban, drinking his instant Folgers coffee, me jumping in and out of the vehicle, going from house to house delivering those papers. And when that job was finally done, we'd go down to the local diner most days, Kay's Kitchen, and have breakfast, tell stories, and just share life. Like I said, he's a great man. But that's what's so scary as a young dad, that even if you're the world's best father, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw up. And one of those instances where my dad made a mistake, I was a 13-year-old boy. And he had a week filled with endless stresses as a second-generation family business owner, but he was going to take me to a high school football game on a Friday night. This was a big deal for a boy who saw his uber-busy dad as a superhero and glorifies the game of football. But the night didn't turn out like I'd hoped. He must have been preoccupied with some stress or something on his mind and a little edgy, and I was smacking my gum a little too loud and a little too crazy. And he let me have it. He ripped into me. He called me a derogatory term that cut a super fragile adolescent boy deep. Now, I don't tell you this story because I haven't forgiven my father. I have. And I don't tell you this story to paint him in a bad light. Remember, he is a great man and father. But I tell you this story to show you the importance of the job at hand as both a father and as a man. That incident was over 17 years ago. 17 years. I can't remember what I had for breakfast most days, or the first song I danced with my wife at our wedding, and a whole host of other things. But I can remember that. Now, these unforgettable moments, they don't have to be negative. It could be like when my 7th grade football coach moved me from offensive line to linebacker, and he pulled me aside and said, "Brad, I believe in you. Go crazy out there." Can any of you relate? Do you have these stories, these snapshots and these moments that are etched into your brain and are unforgettable? I know you do. Because stories are important to us. They are a part of us. They are us. And all of our stories are interconnected and part of a bigger story than our own. Now, I want to change the focus from our story to a boy's story who's in your circle of influence. That boy might be your son, your nephew, a neighbor kid, your friend's kid, a student you have in class. And I want you to take just one boy and put him in your mind as I go through this next portion. I'm going to go through some credible and reliable sources, and if you need those sources when I'm done, I will give them to you. But the important thing is think about that one boy that's in your circle of influence as I go through these next stats. 43% of U.S. children live without their father. 93% of children or boys under the age of 18 have been exposed to pornography. 71% of high school dropouts come from fatherless homes. 16% of boys under the age of 18 have been sexually abused. 90% of homicides in the U.S. are committed by males. 63% of youth suicides are from fatherless homes. And the stat that I think kind of points to all of these and maybe explains them a little bit more is that on average, U.S. children spend 70 hours a week, almost 2 full-time jobs, with peer-to-peer contact, versus, on average, only 30 minutes a week with their fathers. Now, these stories, these statistics, they're almost insane. They're almost mind-numbing. But what I think is really scary is that all of them have names, stories, and faces attached to them. Maybe even the boy you were thinking of. I know these statistics and their stories have direct impact on boys in my circle of influence. Like the boy I know from church named Chris, who comes from a very well-to-do, high-achieving, 2-parent family. And on the outside, Chris seemed to have it all figured out. Social life, great athlete, like I said, wonderful parents. But on the inside, Chris was struggling with a pornography addiction that was completely consuming him and ripping him apart. Or like a boy I had the opportunity to coach, Nick, who came from a fatherless home. But even though he came from a fatherless home, Nick decided to enlist in the armed services when he graduated. And I was super jacked for him. This was exactly what he needed. But he lacked accountability and follow-through. And I just found out, honestly, in the last few weeks, he never enlisted, and he's currently expecting his first child at the age of 19 with a high school senior. Or a boy I got to know, Frank, from Band of Brothers. Frank's dad was uninvolved, struggled with chemical dependency, and when he was involved, he was verbally abusive to Frank. Frank struggled with such severe depression, he started cutting himself as a release from his pain and had to be hospitalized for suicidal thoughts. Now, these boys and stories like these boys' stories might not be in your circle of influence and might not be the boy you were thinking about. but it could be. These boys need men who will live into their story and show them that their future can be rewritten, that victory is possible. Because if you do invest and become part of their story, you're going to see some incredible successes. Remember Chris, who struggled with pornography, or Frank, who struggled with depression, cutting, and suicidal thoughts? I'm here today to tell you both have dramatically rewritten their story. Both are actually mentors to teenage boys right now, positively impacting teenage boys that go through the same struggles that they had. Now, I know I've been talking to the dudes in the room, and I want to address the ladies for a second. And the reason I've been talking to the dudes in the room mostly is because, remember that statistic, 43% of U.S. children live without their fathers? That means, for the most part, you've been doing your share. You've been doing your job. You've been carrying more than your 50%. You've been carrying a disproportionate load, and that's not right. So I'm only going to ask you to do one thing and one thing only. I want you to push men in front of boys. And that pushing may look different. For my saint of a wife, what that means is giving me Monday nights to do Band of Brothers. And for you, maybe it means just simply encouraging the men in your life. And for others, it might mean buying gift cards, giving time. Again, it's going to look different for everybody. But I'm just asking you to push and put men in front of boys. Because boys need men. So dads, be fathers to your sons. Dudes, coach a sports team. Maybe become a big brother. Maybe volunteer at your church. Maybe become a Boy Scout troop leader. Heck, quit your job. Become a teacher. It was one of the best decisions I've ever made. At the end of the day, get involved. And in closing, I would love to introduce you to somebody. It's okay. He lost the shoe. This is Corbin. Remember when I told you to think about that boy when I went through the statistics? This is who I was thinking about. And remember every time I said boys need men? This is who I was thinking about. And just like my dad showed me lots of great things and taught me lots of great things, I'm going to teach Corbin lots of great things. But I'm also, just like my dad and every dad out there, going to make a few mistakes. So what I need is for some men to live into his story and be invested in Corbin. Because at the end of the day, I'm raising Corbin, and I need your help. Thank you.